Resolving conflict with love. As I recall, I once read something to the effect that resolving conflict through reasoned discussion and fighting like cats and dogs were two roughly equally successful ways of resolving conflict, and that ignoring the problem and hoping it goes away was a poor one. Although I bought that for a long time, I retained a decided preference for reasoned discussion. Not long ago, however, as I recall, I read something to the effect that marriage partners who fight like cats and dogs don't live as long as marriage partners who resolve their conflict through reasoned discussion. Makes sense to me. Generally, I think it is best if participants agree on conflict resolution method to be used. Following is a method of conflict resolution that I'll call loving conflict resolution. The initiator of the conflict resolution procedure would ask God for his help in resolving the conflict in God's way. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, King James Version. Next, the initiator would go to the responder and say that they have an issue they would like to discuss, and ask what a good time for that would be. Then they would try to arrange for a time for a discussion. Upon meeting, the participants would pray for God's help in resolving the conflict in God's way, if that is agreeable to both participants. Then, speaking the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15, King James Version. Loving expression is discussed in other portions of this series. Step 1. Each participant would agree to try to listen to the other verbally express what they think and or feel about the issue at hand. Step 2. Then the initiator would try to state their side of an issue in a way that the responder is able to understand. Step 3. The responder would then try to restate in their own words what they understood the initiator to say. Step 4. If the initiator perceives that the responder has understood the initiator's position, then the participants would continue to Step 5. Otherwise, the participants would return to Step 2 and follow the procedure from there, except with additional knowledge gained from the previous iterations, allowing them to refine their communication. Step 5. The responder would try to state their side of the issue that the initiator introduced in a way that the initiator is able to understand. Step 6. The initiator would then try to restate in their own words what they understood the responder to say. Step 7. If the responder perceives that the initiator has understood the responder's position, then the participants would proceed to the following paragraph. Otherwise, the participants would return to Step 5 and follow the procedure from there, except with additional knowledge gained from the previous iterations, allowing them to refine their communication. Once both participants have honestly expressed themselves and feel and or think they have been understood, a part of intimacy may have been achieved, knowing and being known. Step 8. After this, the participants would try to care for each other by trying to think of and propose resolutions to the conflict which would result in both participants being satisfied, feeling cared for, and being together. Here's where the other part of intimacy comes in, caring for and being cared for. Step 9. The participants would work together to arrive at a resolution to the conflict, which might be one or more of the proposed solutions and or one or more parts of the proposed solutions. During this process, additional potential resolutions might be inspired and put forward for consideration and might or might not be incorporated in the final resolution in part or whole. After all this work, hopefully a resolution would be reached that is satisfactory to both participants. If not, perhaps a time could be arranged to begin the process anew, or perhaps an agreement to disagree might be reached. Step 10. Upon resolution of the conflict, the participants might look back on the conflict as having been an opportunity for the parties to become more intimate, which might result in confluent joy, and be cause for rejoicing. Step 11. This might be a good time for the participants to thank God for the resolution of the conflict and to find a way to rejoice together in God's presence. What a contrast with the conflict style of ripping each other to shreds and possibly destroying the relationship when there is a disagreement. Despite loving conflict resolution being such a beautiful thing, it seems to me that it is not always easy and sometimes apparently impossible to persuade people to resolve conflict using it. I think in part that is because of ignorance, but mostly because the natural person wants to win and thereby dominate others. However, my experience is that when two people are willing to love one another, including resolving conflict in a loving way, it can be beautiful. When domination enters the picture, things can get ugly fast. According to Matthew 18:15-17, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. King James Version. I think it might be advisable to attempt to use loving conflict resolution as a part of such efforts to resolve conflicts. It seems that loving conflict resolution might be appropriate for other confrontations as well. If a Christian were to conflict with a reasonable non-Christian, or with a reasonable Christian that is to be treated as a heathen man and a publican, Matthew 8:17, King James Version, loving conflict resolution might be appropriate for that situation. If a Christian were to conflict with an unreasonable non-Christian or with an unreasonable Christian that is to be treated as a heathen man and a publican, the following verse seems appropriate. He that reproveth the scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth to himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Proverbs 9:7-8, King James Version.